Before we get started, I just want to make it clear that this video is not a review of Chrono Trigger. It's a look at the Steam version of the game now that the 5th big patch, which is the final one they've been planning, has just landed as of August 3rd, just on Friday. If what you're looking for is a review of the game, I've done one, and the link to that is in the description. In this video, I'm just covering the major fixes that have been done through the patches. I'm not going to be going over every single thing that they've done here, though. Okay, some background for those of you who aren't aware. Chrono Trigger was released on Steam back in February, and it received just absolute major backlash from the fans. The reason for this is because they just took the Android and iOS version of the game, the mobile version, and they just ported that straight to Steam without touching it, without optimizing it in any way. They did nothing. They just took the game and they just slapped it on Steam, and rightfully so. Fans were very, very upset about this. Since that happened, Square-Enix has been making lots and lots of fixes to the game, and they had planned for 5 patches total. The 5th one is the one that just launched, and so that's why I decided to take a look at the game now that all of those patches have been completed. So, after all of that, is it worth buying now, is the question. I have to give it up to them in at least this regard. They've done a really good job with addressing the biggest and most major problems that fans had. You now have lots of options available to you, which is what PC players expect, and which was one of the biggest reasons why they were so mad at the start. In the latest patch, the 5th one, you can now rebind the keys on both the gamepad and the keyboard. You can also take that horrible, disgusting filter off of the graphics and just play the game unfiltered and scaled appropriately, so it looks a lot better now. Here's an example of the game as it should be played. Unfiltered, beautiful pixelated graphics. Looks great. Now you no longer have to play this utter garbage here. You can now play it so that it actually looks good. They still probably should have provided a CRT filter for those who want that, but the option to play the game unfiltered is, I think, what most of us were really wanting to see. This is kind of a little thing, but one thing I noticed that's kind of weird is that the character sprites on the world map look different in this version than they do in either the DS or the SNES version, so they still work though. I mean, they still are kind of the same style, but anyways, just a little thing. The UI looks way better now, way better, and more closely matches the DS version of the game. For the most part, that's a really good thing, because I like the UI in the DS version better than in the SNES version. But the one drawback here is that they put a health bar and an ATB bar underneath the characters during battles. In the DS version, the ATB bar and your health and all that stuff was displayed on the bottom screen rather than the top screen. So in order to address that sort of unique UI problem, taking something that was designed for 2 screens and then putting them on one, they just basically slapped a health bar and an ATB bar underneath the characters while you're fighting. Maybe, to some degree, I can kind of barely start to see where they were coming from with this, but if you look right down here, there's plenty of space here to put an ATB bar. Look at the empty space here. Look at the empty space here. They could have scrunched these closer together. You already have your HP displayed there. They could have totally put an ATB bar down here. There's no reason to put it on the screen underneath the characters. Sometimes it can get in the way. It doesn't look that great. It doesn't really look like it meshes or belongs. I don't know. There's a better way they could have done this for sure. In menus and things like that, this is where the UI is way better now. It was designed for mobile, on Android and iOS, to have really big buttons that could be used for the touch screen, for the touch controls. That's all been done away with and replaced with something that looks much better on a large display. And the font has been fixed. Oh my god. Oh my god, did this look bad when it launched. The font looked horrible. It didn't look like it belonged in the game at all. They didn't even bother to put a drop shadow underneath it to make it a little bit easier to read. It was, of all the things I had seen in that version of the game when it launched, this font was just like the epitome of laziness. It was just so bad. One thing that I've noticed here is that they've put it into widescreen now, 16:9 aspect ratio, right? The game was originally made at a 4:3 aspect ratio. And for screens that scroll right to left, you'll have no borders on it. It'll basically be 16:9 widescreen. But for all of the screens in the original game that did not scroll side to side, they only scrolled up and down, you'll see that the black bars on the side will be there. Now, this is only because I don't think those assets were created in the original version of the game. They can't put it into widescreen because the borders on the sides here, there was nothing there to begin with that they could now display in widescreen. The game was designed to be in a 4:3 aspect ratio, so the artists didn't bother, painting stuff beyond these borders. So it's a little bit weird that, like, on one screen you'll have a wide aspect ratio, it's filling up your 16:9 display, and then you'll move to another screen and it doesn't. It's not, this is a nitpick, this is a small thing, but it's something I noticed, it's something that bothered me a little bit. They've also made other little improvements, like you can use the keyboard now to type in names if you want to rename your characters, lots of little things like that. They've also added an extras section where you can watch the FMV cutscenes, listen to music, see illustrations, view the game's multiple endings. These are all features that were in the DS version that they're only now getting into here. However, they have not added all of the features of the DS version back into this, and that's a little bit concerning. They don't have the bestiary in here, they don't have the dojo, and they don't have all of the FMV cutscenes. I don't know why, but they have not included in this version on Steam, even now, all of the features that were in the DS version. And I mean, if you're trying to make this out to be a definitive version of the game, and you're going to have missing features like that, it's not a good thing. Hopefully they will still add this later, even though they'd only planned for the 5 patches. They've also made it now so that you can dash by default, rather than being required to hold down the dash button. I know that for a lot of people that's a big deal. They'd rather just be able to run with the D-pad, and if they want to walk, then they can hold a button, so they fixed that now. There's still some occasional slowdown and dips in frame rate, and PC elitists are going to scoff at this, and, they probably have reason to. However, it wasn't bad enough or frequent enough to be something that, significantly hurt my experience. It was just like, oh, this game was made on the SNES. This game was made, this particular version, to run on Android and iOS. There isn't any reason why we should be having frame rate dips on a PC version of Chrono Trigger in this day and age. Come on. They've fixed a number of other bugs. I won't even bother detailing all of them, because the one that matters currently is the fact that save spots are bugged right now. And this, to me, alone makes this version of the game not worth buying until they fix this. Essentially, you're supposed to be able to walk through the save points. In the SNES version, the DS version, whatever, you can walk through them, and when you're in the middle of it, there's sort of a little ding sound that happens, and that's when you know you can then go into your menu and save the game. Here in this version on Steam, it's solid. You can't approach the save point from any side other than the top. You have to come from top down before you'll hear that ding. You're not able to move through it like you could in other versions. And in several instances, the save spot is placed in such a way to where you can't approach it from the top. You would have to approach it from the side or from the bottom, but it's bugged, so you can't get to it and you can't save. In Guardia Castle here, there are 2 save points that you cannot access. One in the cell that you start in, and then one at the save point right before you fight the boss for this dungeon. You cannot save at either of those places. The boss isn't very hard, so you shouldn't die or anything like that, but if you did, you would have to go back not 1, not 2 saves before, but 3 saves before that, which would put you possibly half an hour to an hour back in progress. So things like this are not acceptable. I mean, the game is not working correctly. It's bugged. It's broken in this aspect and needs to be fixed, and I would not recommend buying it until they address this. Other bugs that people are reporting, I've heard that from time to time shops don't show how much gold you have or what the item prices are that you're trying to buy. I didn't see that myself, so I can't confirm it, but these are things people have been reporting and complaining about. So, all of that being said, 5 patches later, the Steam version is almost as good as the DS version. It's getting there, it's close, but it still needs some more work. It's still missing features from the DS version, there's no excuse for that, and there are bugs here that need to be fixed before I would recommend anyone buy this. The DS version of the game is still without question the definitive version of Chrono Trigger. However, if you don't have a DS, you don't want to buy the DS version, whatever the reason is, this version will be a good version to play once they have fixed some of these bugs. You can play the game in HD, unfiltered, beautiful, pixelated graphics, and on a large display. All of that is an improvement on the DS version, which is low resolution, on a smaller screen, but it's not enough. It's not enough to make up for the missing features. It's not enough to make up for the fact that you can't save at save points, right? So overall, I'd say stay away from it. Stay away from it still until they can address some of these issues, or until they at least say they're going to. They will still address this at some point in the future. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the Steam version of Chrono Trigger. Can't recommend it yet, but keep an eye on it. It'll probably go on sale. Well, it'll definitely go on sale someday in the future for $5 or whatever. And hopefully by then they've fixed all this stuff, and then it'll be a version worth having. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again tomorrow for the podcast. Have a good day.